begin today the Gemara towards the bottom of Lamed Gimel Lamed Beis, 5 or 6 lines up from the bottom of the Yamid, where it says Dine Momenis HaKoil Cholu. The Mishnah says when it comes to a judgment of money matters, then everybody could speak up and say whether to tell us a reason why he's innocent or a reason why he's guilty. Everybody can speak up about this. But when it comes to Dina Nefashis, when you're discussing capital punishment over here, everybody can speak up only for his innocence. But for his guilt, not everybody can speak up. Okay, so now the Mishnah said HaKoil, everybody can speak up. Zok the Gemara, HaKoil, when it says in the Mishnah, everybody can speak up, who does this mean? Vafila Eidim, does it mean the witnesses themselves, that they came and testified that this person did something that they should be chayiv misa? The Eidim themselves, they can speak up, and for either way, for schos or for chiyuv. If so, shall we say that our Mishnah is following only the opinion of Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda, and it's not going according to the Rabbana's opinion. Tanya, because we learned in the Braise, it says in the pasuk, "Ve'eid echad lo yana benefesh." One aid cannot say testimony that a person should be killed. What do we learn from this pasuk? Bein l'schos, bein l'chayva. That means that any of the eidim that said testimony could not now come and speak up and tell us any idea regarding this person, whether for his innocence, whether for his guilt. They can't say anything. However, Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda says, the aid could speak up and say an idea why he should be innocent, but the aid cannot speak up to say that this person is guilty. So our Mishnah that says HaKoil, and seemingly includes Rabbi Yosef, it includes Eidim as well, that anybody, including the Eid that's there, or any of the Eidim, can also say that he's innocent. That's like the opinion of Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda. Rav Papa, so Rav Papa explains, no, our Mishnah when it said HaKoil was including something else. Be'echad min ha-talmidim v'divrei HaKoil. It's referring to, there's the Bezdin, and then in those times, as we learned already before, in front of the Bezdin were the students. The Bezdin was in the yeshiva, and the students would sit in front of the Bezdin and listen to the court case. One of these Talmidim, the students, can speak up for the innocence of this person, that there's a judgment about his chiyuv misa. That's who the HaKoil is referring to. But it's not referring to the Eidim. V'divrei HaKoil, and therefore it can follow according to everyone's opinion, even according to the Rabbanan. Now the Rishonim point out, once one of the Eidim once one of the Dayanim, that is, speak up and say that this person is innocent, that Talmud will now be included in the Bezdin, because when they take account to see what the majority opinion is, since he had an idea that this person is innocent, he's not going to be included in the Bezdin. He's not going to be just a Talmud anymore, sitting and observing from the side. He becomes part of the Bezdin, and then they use him to have the majority opinion to make him innocent. Okay, so now the Gemara explains the machlokes that we brought here in the Braise regarding the Eidim. My time, the Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda. Why does Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda say that the Eidim can speak up for innocence, not for guilt? The Makra, the pasuk says that we just quoted, Eid echad lo yana benefesh lamos. One aid cannot say something on this person to give him misa, to say that he's guilty for misa. The simple pshat of this pasuk actually is to say that when you want to give a person misa, you must have two eidim. You can't rely on one aid. But there's already another pasuk for that. It says in another place that with an eid echad, you can't give someone misa. So therefore this pasuk is extra. Therefore we learn out from here that after the eidim say their testimony, the aid cannot speak up to say any idea that he's guilty. And what we learn from this, it says lamos today. The aid can't speak up to say an idea why he should be guilty. But to come and say a reason why he's innocent, that the aid, after he said testimony of what he did, he was Machal Shabbos, the aid himself could speak up and say why he thinks he's innocent. The Rabbanon, so according to the Rabbanon that say that the aid cannot speak up not for guilt, not for innocence, Amar Reish Lakish says the reason is because if any of the Eidim speak up, even to now come and say that this person is innocent, it actually looks like that they're biased, and that's the reason why they're saying this. Why does it look like that they're biased? Because it could be that these Eidim are afraid that what happens if it turns out that the testimony that they just said could be found to be a lie. Someone else will come and be mazim them, so they don't want to get into trouble themselves. They got cold feet, and therefore they're speaking up now to say that this person is innocent, so the Bezdin shouldn't give the verdict that this person is chayiv misa, then it would be possible that it would turn back on them. So therefore they're speaking up to say that he's innocent. So once Eidim say their testimony, they cannot speak up at all. So now, according to the Rabbanan's opinion that the Eidim can't speak up at all, so high lamus my darshibei. But in the pasuk it says that they only can't speak up to say that he's guilty, to say that he's chayiv misa. So what do they do with that word in the pasuk? Says the Gemara, Maik milei be'echad min talmidim. According to the Chachamim, you divide the pasuk into two. There's the first part of the pasuk, Eid echad lo yana benefesh, and you stop right there. And that means that an aid cannot speak up after they said their testimony for anything, not for guilt, not for innocence. Then when the pasuk goes on to say lomos, that's separate. That's talking about one of the students sitting there that a student cannot speak up to say anything about his guilt. As the Gemara brings the Braisa, the Tanya, the Braisa said, if one of the Eidim themselves comes and says, Yeshli l'lamadol of schus, I have something to say about this person's innocence. We don't listen to the Eidim. Talmud Loimar Eid Echad lo yana. That the Eid Echad, after one of the Eidim, after he said testimony, he cannot speak up again. So according to the Chachamim, you stop the pasuk right there. That's one drasha regarding the Eidim themselves, that they can't speak up at all. Now, if one of the students sitting in front of the court says that I have something to say about his guilt, how do I know that I don't listen to one of the students? Talmud Loimar Echad. That's the Talmud Loimar Echad Loyane Benefesh Lomos. Here we read it with the word Lomos. The word Lomos is not speaking about the Eid anymore. The word Lomos is darshan separately, that Echad, any of the students that wants to speak up, for Lamos to say that he's guilty, that he's chayiv misa, we don't listen to one of the students. But if one of the Eidim themselves want to speak up, he will be allowed. That's the Eid will be allowed to speak up for that.
For schut.
Yeah, for schut, correct. Okay, that's the shot over here in the Mishnah. Okay. The Gemara goes back. Dina nefashas amalamet chulu. What did it say in the Mishnah? That when you come to Dina nefashas, so if there's the judges and a judge brought up an idea why he's guilty, or rather a judge brought up an idea why he's innocent, so that judge has to stick to his line of thinking and the svara that he said that he's innocent. Cannot change then to say that he's guilty. Okay, so what's the pshat in the Mishnah? Omar Rav, so Rav explains, this that it says that this judge can't switch from his idea that he's innocent, that's only during the deliberations. And the reason is because during the deliberations, if someone brings up an idea that he's innocent, we want him to try to follow through with that idea as much as possible. And therefore we say to him, you stick to that idea and try to examine this idea that you have as much as possible, and we don't allow him to entertain any other idea that he's guilty. But then when it comes to the actual verdict, the one that said originally that he's innocent can now join the others that say that he's guilty. Because if in the end of all the deliberations he sees that the truth is that he's guilty, he could change his mind. This is the truth now, so that's the conclusion. He can change his mind and say that he's guilty. So Meisvei, the Gemara is going to ask many questions here on what Rav said. Meisvei, so these are all from Mishnahs that are later here in the Pedic. So in Mishnah it describes regarding when you're judging someone in Dina Nefashis, so it says, by Dina Nefashis, you can't give the ruling of guilty in the same day. You have to sleep overnight. Maybe you'll come up with a different idea to find something that's innocent. And then the Mishnah there says, L'machras, the next day, Mashkimenu boin, they come back in the morning to the Bezdin, Hamezaka oimer ani hamezaka, the one that said yesterday that he's innocent comes today and says that I still think that he's innocent. The one that says he's guilty, I was the one that said yesterday that he's guilty, and I still say today that he's guilty. Right? So they have to say their opinions again, that they still hold by what they said yesterday. They thought it overnight. Now, the Mishnah goes on to say, Hamalamet Chayva, the one that said yesterday that he's guilty, Malamet Chus, he can change his opinion today and he can come and say that he's innocent. Aval Hamalamet Chus, but the one that yesterday said that he was innocent, he can't come tomorrow, the next day, and say that he's guilty. Okay, so here, this Mishnah is describing that the one that said he's innocent cannot change his opinion when? Even the next day. So the Gemara says, what is that? What's the significance of what the Mishnah is saying here? That even the next day he can't change his opinion. The next day is when they're coming back to the Bezdin to actually give out the verdict. That's they slept overnight, and now the next day is the verdict. And what does it say here? That the one that said yesterday that he's innocent, when it comes to the verdict, he cannot switch his opinion to say that he's guilty. So this is a question on Rav that says that when it comes to the final verdict, he could change his opinion. So the Gemara says it's not an ayah from here. According to your reasoning, the way you understand this lamachras, the next day in the morning when they come back, maso matan mileke. They come the next morning. They don't. There's no deliberations. There's no discussions again about this. The whole idea here is that they wait overnight and then they want to listen to what any of the judges say. Do they have a change of opinion? And they're going to discuss it again. So therefore, ki katani b'shas maso matan. When it says here that he can change his opinion only from zechus, from chayva to zechus, from guilt to innocence, and not the opposite. So it's still like Rav said. That's only regarding the time when they're still discussing this. But when it comes to the actual conclusion, to the actual verdict, and one sees that his svara is wrong and he wants to switch to say guilty, he could switch at the end. He has to if that's what he sees is the truth. Another question the Gemara asks, Toshima, I'll bring you a raya from what it says in the Mishnah. Donin, this is also the same Mishnah there. It says, Donin elu keneged elu. That now the judges, they discuss with one another. And here that Mishnah is talking about a case where by dinim nefashis, as we learned in the beginning of the Masechta, when you want to take the majority opinion to say that he's guilty, so you have to have at least two that should be more than the minority to say that he's guilty. If you want to say that he's innocent, it's enough to have just one in the majority, one more than the minority to say that he's innocent. Okay, so what happens if you have a situation where there was the majority opinion that said he was guilty, but it was only one more? So you can't paskin that he's guilty, but you can't paskin that he's innocent either. So you're sort of stuck. In such a case, by din and nefashis, when you're paskin with a bezdin of 23, what do you do in such a case? You add more judges, you keep on adding more judges, and then maybe you'll get a majority that will say that he's innocent. Right, so here, this Mishnah is speaking about what happens if you added the maximum amount of judges, up to 71. And now you have 35 that say that he's innocent, and 36 that say that he's guilty. So you can't paskin. It's a stalemate. You can't say that he's innocent because the majority says that he's guilty, but you can't say he's guilty either because you need two in the majority to say that he's guilty, but you only have one more that says that he's guilty. So what do you do? So in such a case, they have to continue deliberating and discussing this until finally they'll convince one of those that said that he's guilty, that he's innocent, and now it's going to be one in favor of him being innocent, and then you'll be able to pass him that he's innocent. So now the question is, why does the Mishnah say that this is what they're going to try to do, to convince one that said that he's guilty that he should be innocent? If what Rav said before is true, that when it comes to the final verdict, even the one that all the time during the deliberations was saying that he's innocent could change his opinion to say that he's guilty, so listen nami yibche. The Mishnah could say also the opposite example, that maybe through their further discussions, they'll convince one that said that he was innocent that he's guilty, and now instead of having one in the majority that he's guilty, you'll have two more in the majority that he's guilty. So they could have said the opposite as well in the Mishnah. Says the Gemara, Tane aschus kamahader. The Tana of the Mishnah over here is giving an example of innocence. In a case of schus, that they tried to get someone to say that he's innocent. Achayve loy kamahader. But regarding chayva, to say that we're going to switch someone's opinion regarding guilt, that the Tana doesn't want to mention. The Tana is saying that we try to see to it that this person should be innocent. Toshama, the Gemara brings another ayah. Rabbi Yossi bar Chanina said, one of the students that was sitting there in front of the bezdin that brought up an idea that this person is innocent, umeis, and now that student passed away. Now, as I mentioned before, the Rishonim say that once a student brings up this idea, he becomes now part of the bezdin because we want to include him in the majority opinion to say that he's innocent. And now the student that brought up this idea and is now part of the bezdin, he died. But we consider him as if he's still alive, and he's still in his place, to use this as a majority opinion. The question is, how can we use that opinion that he said during the deliberations? He brought up an idea to say that he's innocent, but now when it comes to the final conclusion, he's not alive anymore. So why are we using the opinion that he said before? According to Rav, that says that when it comes to the conclusion, he could change his opinion. So we should say, Ilo havakayim hadebe, that if he would be alive now, maybe he would retract from what he said before. So how do we know to include him now in the final verdict that what he said before, his opinion still counts and still matters, that this person is innocent? There's a discussion in the Rishonim about this. Why would I assume that to say that he would change his opinion? Especially the pasuk says, "V'shaftu eida v'yitzilu eida," that you have to see to do whatever you can to save this person, not to give him the chi of misa. Why would I say that he would be haderbei? Okay, the Rishonim say that there is a situation where having him change his opinion to say now that he's guilty could actually end up saving this person. How's that? Because the halacha that we learned before in the Masechta is, what happens if the entire Bezdin all say that this person is chayiv? So in such a case, you can't give him a chi of misa. So over here, he changes his opinion later. Now, because there's one person now that's saying that he's guilty, that itself could be a reason why you would save him from the chi of misa. Okay, let's go back to the pshat of the Gemara. So the Gemara says, but that's not a question. That how do we follow his opinion now? Now he's not here, so he did not have charata. So therefore, because he's not alive, and we don't see that he had charata, so therefore we follow the opinion that he said before. So if he would be alive, then Rav is right. He would be able to retract from his opinion. But now he's not here, so therefore we follow his opinion that he said before. But the Gemara asks, it was sent from there, from Eretz Yisrael, that L'divrei Rabbi Yosi bar Chanina, according to what Rabbi Yosi bar Chanina says here in this Mishnah, Moitze Meklal Rabbeinu. This excludes from the opinion of Rabbeinu, which is Rav. Rav said that you can't change your opinion by, again, Rav says that you can. You could change your opinion at the time of the conclusion of the verdict. But here, Rabbi Yosi bar Chanina, that's saying that we consider the student is still like he's still alive. The reason is, it seems like, because he can't change his opinion. So they sent to say this actually refutes Rav's opinion. So the Gemara says, Ein moitze itmer. No, actually what they sent from Eretz Yisrael is to say that it does not refute Rav's opinion. As we explained, because now that he's not alive anymore and he did not change his opinion from before, so we're going to still include his opinion that he said before. Itmar, the Gemara brings, Ein moitze itmar, that is, goes together. Ein moitze itmar, that's what the statement was from Eretz Yisrael. Tashema, another ayah the Gemara brings. Shnei seifrei hadayonim oimdim lefneim. When by a court, you have two scribes that are standing, that is the scribes of the Bezdin that stand in front of them. Echad ben hayamin, one is on the right, ve'echad ben hasmoil, one on the left of the court, and v'kaisvin, they have to record divrei hamzakin, the words of those judges that are saying that this person is innocent, what exactly their reasoning is, and v'divrei hamachayvin, and they also have to write down the reasoning and the ideas of those that say that he's guilty. Okay, so now why is it necessary for them to record this? It's understood why it's necessary to record the reasons for those that said that he's guilty, because it's going to be relevant for the following reason. What happens, so as we said, when it comes to a guilty verdict, you have to wait overnight. And then what happens if the next day there's going to be additional reasons for what they see that this person is guilty? Now, on the next day, if they didn't decide that the guilty reasons they had the day before, they didn't go back on that. Not only they didn't go back on that, the next day they came up with other reasons, with different reasons why this person is guilty. What's the halacha now? If you come up with new reasons for this person being guilty, you still can't paskin today on the verdict to say that he's guilty, because we already slept overnight, because now you have new reasons. Once you have new reasons that he's guilty, you have to wait another night. So therefore, halon is din, you have to wait another night and paskin the next day. So it's necessary to record what exactly are the details to know whether you're going to have to wait another day. You can't just write, the judge just said that he's guilty, because then you're going to come the next day, you're not going to know whether there's new reasons here that you have to wait another day. So you have to know the reasons to know if you have to wait another day. But however, this that the Mishnah says that you have to have the scribe write the reasons, the explanations for those that said that he's innocent. My time, what's the reason why it's necessary to write the reasons for those that said that he's innocent? So, Lav, don't you think the reason is that even when it comes to the verdict, and these that say that he's innocent now want to switch their opinion to say that he's guilty, that we're not going to pay attention to them? That's the reason why it has to be written down. Okay, so Rashi explains what the Gemara is saying here. The Gemara is saying as follows, that if the reason you have to write down the reasons of those that say that he's innocent is just because of what it says in the Mishnah, that during the deliberations, the one that say that he's innocent cannot switch their opinion and say that he's guilty. For that, it's not necessary to write down the reasons that they said. It's just necessary to write, this judge, he said innocent. So we should remember, it should be clear the next day that during the deliberations, they cannot change their opinion to say that he's guilty. It's not necessary, though, to have the scribes write down divrei hamazaken, which means all the ideas of what exactly the content of what they said. What's the reason why you have to write down the content of what they said? So Rashi explains it's going to be relevant for the actual final psak din, if they want to change their opinion. Why? Because when it comes to the actual psak din, so over here, you have to know whether they could change their opinion or not. Because the Mishnah says, and now this is the question on Rav, that really they cannot change their opinion even when it comes to the final verdict. But there's an exception to this. When could they change their opinion even when it comes to the final verdict? So we learned before in the Gemara said in the end of Daf Lamed Gimel, if they made a mistake regarding a clear pasuk in the Torah, that's a davar shatzadukim maidim by, something that's mamish clear against the Torah, that's something that they could change their opinion even regarding the final verdict. So it's necessary to write down their svaris that they had, that they said that this person is innocent, in order to know when it comes to the final verdict, really by the final verdict, they cannot retract from their opinion unless it's something which the tzedukah made by, unless it's something which is against the Torah. So therefore we want to know clearly what exactly those svaris are, so they shouldn't come later and say that we want to switch our opinion because what we said before goes against the pasuk in the Torah. So we'll look and see what the idea they had before to see, does it go against the pasuk in the Torah or not. So, but the point though is, you see here clearly that it's necessary to write down not just the fact that these are judges that are saying that he's zakai, that he's innocent, but you have to write down the details of what the svar is that they said. Why? Because it's going to be relevant to know regarding the psak din. So we see from here that even regarding the final verdict, they could retract from the opinion. Again, that when it comes to the final verdict, they cannot. That is, they cannot retract from their opinion before, and therefore it's necessary to know if it's a davar shatzadukim maidim by, and they could retract or not. So this is a question on Rav. So the Gemara says, no, that's not the reason why we write this down. Loi, we're not writing this down for this reason. Rather, they cannot have charata at the time of the verdict. At the time of the verdict, like Rav said, they could either way have charata. It doesn't make a difference if it's a davar shatzadukim maidim by or not. Either way, if now by the verdict, now they see that their opinion they said before is wrong, they could either way change their mind now. So then if so, why is it necessary to write down what they said before? It's necessary to know this because you need to see what the reasons are of those judges that said that he's innocent. Because if it turns out that two judges said that he's innocent, but each one of them based their opinion that he's innocent on two psukim in the Torah, and basically, in other words, it comes out that two different psukim is the source for the same idea that he's innocent. So then you can't count these two judges as two anymore. Why? Because one of them is making a mistake. You can't have the same idea that comes from two psukim in the Torah, because the Torah would not repeat itself. As Gemara here says, Ravasi asked Rabbi Yechanan, what happens if two judges come and say the same reason, and they both are learning the same reason from two different psukim in the Torah? Mahu, what's the halacha in this case? Could their opinions be counted as two separate opinions, and they're counted as two judges or not? Why not? Again, so the point here is because if you have two judges that are saying the same reason, but they're learning it from two psukim, one of them must be wrong. One limud is right, the other limud is wrong. So Amalei, he said, in such a case, we only count them as one. One of them must be wrong. So that's the reason, that's the pshat that the Mishnah says here, that you have to have the Seifrei Adayan and write down Divrei HaMezakin. The reason is not because you can't have charata at the end of the judgment. And therefore you have to know if what they want to have charata now is davar shatzadukim maidim by or not. No, we're following according to Rav. When it comes to the end, they either way, if they see that now he's guilty, they could either way have charata. So mitzad that, there's no reason to write down the svaras that they had before that he's innocent. But the reason you have to write it down is to understand, to see, are these like one judge or two judges? Now the Gemara brings a source for this. From where do we see that it can't be that there are two psukim in the Torah that say the same idea? Abaye says, the pasuk says regarding Aseres HaDibros, Achas diber Elokim, Shtayim zu shamaiti, that Hashem speaks once, and the one time that He speaks, I hear two different things from what Hashem said. So what is this pasuk saying? That And the pasuk is Ki Oizalikim. This is the strength of the Eibishter. And what you learn from this is Mikra Echad Yoitzel Lekama Taimim. That you could have one pasuk that you can learn a few different things from one pasuk. But Ve'im Tam Echad Yoitzel Mikama Mikrois. But you can't say that the same idea is repeated in the Torah in one pasuk and in another pasuk. Hashem does not repeat anything. That's what you learn from here. This is also the pasuk that you learn out from Zacha V'Shama B'Dibur Echad. But here the Gemara is learning out that you could have one pasuk that could be interpreted in different ways. But the opposite is not true. You can't say that the Torah repeats itself. The Bei Rabbi Shmuel Tane, Rabbi Shmuel learned this out from what it says, Ukepatish Yufaitzitz Sela, a hammer that's shattering the rock. What does this mean? Ma patish zeh mischalek lekam nitzaitzis, just like this hammer. So it bangs on the rock and the rock is shatters into many pieces. Af mikra echad yoitze lekam taimim. So too, you could have one pasuk, and this one pasuk it can be shattered into many, many different reasons. Tamam Shashkacha Pratis, we're learning this Gemara today. This Gemara is brought in the Rashi in the Chumash today, Parshas Ve'era. In the beginning, Rashi explains the how you learn the beginning of Parshas Ve'era. Rashi brings this Gemara of Kapatish Yifaitzis Sela. And here, there's a Taisus that discusses what this Patish Yifaitzis Sela means. Does it mean that when you take a hammer and you bang the rock, so the rock shatters into many pieces? Or does it mean that the rock is so hard that the hammer ends up shattering into many pieces? Okay, that's two pshatim in this Taisus here. And there's a sikha from the Rebbe in Chelik Chaf Aleph, I believe it is, where the Rebbe explains Barichis in Rashi, when Rashi quotes this, what Rashi exactly means about this, and in the Pshuta Mikra there, very, very big arichis in these two pshatim of whether the rock is the one that shatters or the hammer is the one that shatters. Okay, but Akapana, the Nakud over here is that a pasuk could be interpreted in many different ways, but you can't say that there's two psukim, that the Torah repeats itself and says the same thing twice. Okay, now here the Gemara is going to go into a whole side discussion. We're going to go into now a sugya that of Kachim, the Gemara of Zvachim, because the Gemara is going to try to bring an example. Where do you find that two Tanaim learned out the same halacha, the same idea from two different psukim? So, hey, chidami tam echad b'shnei mikrais. What's an example of one idea, one halacha that's learned from two different psukim? So, Amar Rav Zvid, first the Gemara tries. Rav Zvid says, "Keditnan." We have a Mishnah in Zvachim that says that mizbeach mekadesh esaroi. The mizbeach will sanctify an animal that was brought onto the mizbeach if it was fit to be brought on the mizbeach. Now, what this is referring to is a carbon that now was actually puzzle to be brought on the mizbeach. It was puzzle whether because the blood of the animal spilled or because it was pigul. The kain that shechted had the wrong machshava when he shechted the carbon, and therefore it was really puzzle to be brought on the mizbeach. But this was an animal that when it was brought into the azara, it was fit to be a carbon. So because it was roy in the beginning, it was fit as a carbon, even if later it became puzzle, and you were not supposed to bring it onto the mizbeach. But once it was brought onto the mizbeach, you leave it there. You burn it on the mizbeach. So where do you learn this out? So Rabbi Shua says, Kol roy liishim, that's something that's fit and originally to be brought onto the fires of the mizbeach. Im Allah, even after there was a psul and it was not supposed to be brought on the mizbeach, but once it was brought onto the mizbeach, lo yered, you don't take it off. You burn it on the mizbeach. Shana, the pasuk says, ha'oila al moikta, it goes on to the mizbeach al moikta, on the fire of the mizbeach. So we compare now these two expressions in the pasuk. Ma oila shiru oila ishim, just like a carbon oila is fit to be burnt in the mizbeach, and him also leiteired, once it's on the mizbeach, you don't take it down. Af kol shehu roy ishim, so too any carbon that originally was roy to be brought into the fire of the mizbeach, im ala leyered. If it's brought into the mizbeach, you don't take it down anymore. That's what you learn out from this pasuk. Rabbi Gamliel says, Kol haroy lemizbeach, anything that's fit to be brought on the mizbeach, im ala leyered. Once it was brought onto the mizbeach, you don't take it down. Seemingly he's saying the exact same idea, and he brings the same pasuk, but he learns it out from another word in the pasuk. Shenemar hiya oila al moikta al hamizbeach. He adds the words al hamizbeach. He learned it out from those words, and he says as follows: Ma oila shehiruya legabe mizbeach. Just like the carbon oila is fit to be brought on the mizbeach, and him also once it was brought up, leiteired, you don't take it down. Av kol shehuroy lemizbeach. So too any animal that originally was brought into the azara and it was roy to be brought as a carbon on the mizbeach, imal leyered. Once it's brought on the mizbeach, you don't take it down. That's what you learn out from the pasuk. So we see here, says the Gemara, Tarvayu Maika Marbu. Both opinions, Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Gamliel. What are they learning out from the psukim here? They're learning out the same thing. Psulin, that once the carbon became puzzle, But if it was brought into the Mizbeach, b'di'evet, you leave it there, and you're makri the carbon on the Mizbeach. Now, Rabbi Yeshua learns it out from the word maikta, that we compare the word maikta to the word oila, that once it's in the fire, you leave it there. And Rabbi Gamliel learns out the same point, but from the next word in the pasuk, from the word mizbeach, that we compare oila to mizbeach, and mizbeach to oila, that is, that you leave it on the mizbeach. So this is an example where you have the same halacha, but it's learned out from two different psukim. But the Gemara says, no, it's not a good example, because v'hahasa miflik pligi. Over there, in that Mishnah, there's actually an argument between them. The Ktani Seifa, and the Seifa of that Mishnah, it clearly says that there's an argument. Ein bein divrei Rabbi Gamliel and divrei Rabbi Yeshua. There's no difference between what Rabbi Gamliel said and what Rabbi Yeshua said. Elo hadam v'anesachim. The difference is whether this concept applies also to the blood, and also regarding the nesachim, the wine that's poured on the mizbeach. Rabbi Gamliel says that just like we say regarding the animal, the parts of the animal that are burnt on the mizbeach, that once it's brought up, then b'di'evet you don't take it down. According to Rabbi Gamliel, the same will apply also regarding the dam and the nesachim. Why? Because we're learning it out from the word mizbeach. Regarding the word mizbeach, that doesn't only include what's being burnt in the fire. That includes even the blood or the wine that's poured on the mizbeach. That also, once it's on the mizbeach, you don't take it down. Rabbi Yeshua, however, Rabbi Yeshua says, because he's learning it out from the word maikta, which refers to the fire, but the blood or the wine that's on the mizbeach, that's not in the fire, that over there, this halacha, that's something that's possible, b'di'evet, you don't take it down, that it doesn't apply to this. So there's a clear difference in the drasha. So it's not the same thing that's being learned out from two psukim. Elam Rav Papa, so therefore Rav Papa says, Kedetanya, that we see two Tanoim that learn out the same halacha from two different psukim. It's like what we learned in the Braisa. Rav Yossi Aglili says, it says in the pasuk that whatever touches the mizbeach becomes sanctified. So Shemei Ani, so from this I would learn out, now what is this pasuk here teaching? This is the same concept actually that we learned before. That something which is pasul, once it touches the mizbeach, once it goes onto the mizbeach, yikdash, it becomes sanctified, and you can't take it down from the mizbeach. So Shemei Yani, I would learn from this, bein roi, bein she'ein roi, whether it's something that was originally fit to be brought in the mizbeach, whether it's not fit to be brought in the mizbeach. Now Rashi says, what does it mean over here when it says ein roi? You would think that, let's say you put onto the mizbeach something that's not supposed to be brought in the mizbeach at all. Like v'chol sa'er, v'chol devash, you're not supposed to bring chametz or honey, or even, let's say, a chulin animal, or a tzvi, a deer, that's not supposed to be brought as a carbon b'chlal. You would think that even if you bring that on the mizbeach, it should also be left there and be burnt on the mizbeach. Talmud loymar kavasim. So the pasuk over there says that it's only like a lamb, which means ma kvasim ru'yin, a lamb is something which is fit to be brought as a carbon. Av kol roy also has to be something which is fit to be brought as a carbon. Then, if it became pasul later and it was brought in the mizbeach, I'm not gonna take it off from the mizbeach. That's what we learn out. So Kvasim teaches me this halacha. Rabbi Kiva says, Oila. I learn out from the lashon that it says over there in the pasuk, Oilas tamid. So I say, Oila ma Oila ru'uya. Just like a carbon Oila refers to an animal that's roy to be brought in the mizbeach, af kol roy. It has to be something that was originally roy to be brought in the mizbeach, and not something like honey or something else that's not roy lachatchila to be brought in the mizbeach. Okay, now this drasha in the Braisa over here that you have. Who was it again? Rav Yossi Aglili. Rav Yossi Aglili and Rabbi Kiva, they seem to be saying a very similar drasha to what we brought before from Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Gamliel. But the Gemara in Zvachim explains why they're not the same thing. There's a difference between them. According to Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Yeshua, this halacha applies even to a carbon mincha. But over here, according to their opinion, it does not apply to a carbon mincha. That's the difference between them. So that's not a repetition. But the Gemara over here discusses now what is the difference between Rabbi Kiva and Rabbi Yossi Aglili. Is there any difference between them? Now, v'tarva yomai kamamatu, both of them, what are they coming to exclude regarding this halacha? Psuli, they're coming to say regarding something which is possible that once it's brought in the mizbeach, it could be left there. And they're both coming to say, but it had to be something which was roy to be brought in the mizbeach originally. Now, mar ma'isilam kvasim. Rabbi Yossi Aglili is learning it out from the word kvasim. Or mar ma'isilam ha'ila. And Rabbi Kiva is learning it out from the word oila. So they both are saying the same thing, and they're learning it out from two different psukim. This is an example of one halacha that's learned from two psukim. But on this as well, the Gemara says there's a difference between them. Ravada Barava said, oila sa'oif psula ikebenayu. The difference between them is whether we apply this also to a oila of the birds. Do we say the same thing applies there as well? The one that learned Rabbi Yosef, that learns it out from the word kvasim, kvasim. We applied this regarding lambs, regarding the animals. Here we say that once it's brought in the mizbeach, even though it was possible, it's left there. By a oila of a bird, that doesn't apply. The one that learns it out, Rabbi Akiva learns it out from the word oila, afilo oila saif. That includes oila, any kind of oila, even by a bird. The halacha applies. Nami, it also applies. Okay, so therefore, this is not an example of one halacha that's learned from two different psukim. So therefore, the Gemara says, I'll give you another example. Ela Rav Ashi says, here's an example. Kedetanya, we learned in a brayse, and here, this is a brayse that's speaking about the isser of shchute chutz. You're not allowed to shecht any karbanis outside of the Beis HaMikdash, and if one does that, then there's a chiyuv of koros. So here the pasuk says, Dam yechoshev leishahu. This is like blood for this person, which is dam shofach, like he spilled blood. And the pasuk there goes on to say that because of this, v'nichrisa his chayav koros. Now it says a double lashon, dam yechoshev, and then it says dam shofach. What do we learn out from this? L'rabbis es hazayrik. We learn out from this that not only someone that shechts a carbon outside the Beis HaMikdash is chayav koros, but also one that sprays blood. It was shechted inside the Beis HaMikdash. But then he goes and sprays the blood on a mizbeach outside of the Beis HaMikdash, he's going to be chayav koros as well. Rabbi Shmuel, that's the source for this halacha, that's what Rabbi Shmuel says. Rabbi Akiva says, we learn it out from a different pasuk. Upon the different pasuk it says afterwards, Oy zevach. So in that pasuk it says, Alem Taimar Ishmi. This is the next pasuk there. Or maybe a few psukim later, it says, Alem Taimar Ish Ishmi Beis Yisrael, Amenager Asher Yoger B'Soicham, Asher Yale Oyla Oy Zavach. If he brings a carbon oila or a zevach outside the Beis HaMikdash. So the oy zevach is extra words, l'rabbis es hazayrik. This comes to say that even if you only spray the blood outside the Beis HaMikdash, there's also the chiyuv of koros for shchutei chutz. Now v'tarva yomai kamarbu, both opinions, Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva, what are they coming to learn out from these two psukim? Zrike. They're coming to say that if you spray the blood outside the Beis HaMikdash, there's a chiyuv koros for this, for shchutei chutz. Mar ma'isilam dam yechashev. Rabbi Shmuel is learning it out from the extra words of dam yechashev. Omar ma'isilam oy zavach. And Rabbi Akiva learns it out from the extra words of oy zavach. So the same halacha is learned from two different psukim. But the Gemara asks on this, it's still not a source for the same halacha from two different psukim. Because Rabbi said that there is a difference between them. Shachat v'zarak ikebenayu. If one both shechted and sprayed the blood outside the Beis HaMikdash, here will be the difference. Will he be chayav koros once or twice? According to Rabbi Shmuel's opinion, ein chayav ela achas. He's only going to be chayav koros once, because we're learning it out from the pasuk of Dam Yishofech, where that's the pasuk where it says that he gets koros, and in that pasuk it also says that you get koros for the shechita, so it goes together. So there's only one koros. The pasuk over there says the koros for both of them together. So you only chayav koros once. The David Rabbi Akiva chayiv shtayim, but according to Rabbi Akiva, that learns it out then from a later pasuk, where the pasuk says that you should not be maila. The pasuk that we quoted, oy zavach. What does it say in that pasuk? That asher yala oy loy zavach. That's not the pasuk of shchita. There's the pasuk of shchutei chutz, where it says you get koros, and then there's another pasuk about lo yala, you shouldn't be maila, and there it says oy zavach, which includes even dam. So it's a separate pasuk, and therefore you get koros twice for the shchita outside and for the zrika outside. So therefore, the fact that they are learning from different psukim, it's not the same halacha. There's a difference here whether you get koros once or twice if he did both shchita and zrika. So therefore, it's not a good source for this. But the Gemara concludes and says that no, this actually is a case where you have the same halacha from two different psukim, because Hayitmar Allah, we learned on this machlekes of Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva, Amar Abaye said, Afla Divrei Rabbi Akiva Nami, even according to Rabbi Akiva's opinion, Ein chayav ela achas. He's only going to be chayav once koros. According to Rabbi Akiva, in the pasuk of koros, it says one pasuk for shchita and in another pasuk for yala, for bringing it up, which includes the blood as well. It's two different psukim. So the Gemara says the reason is because the Amakra shom tala oilesecha v'shom tase. Here in this pasuk it says tala and v'shom tase arvin rachmanu lekula asiyes. The pasuk over here combines both tala and tasa as one in the same pasuk to say that it's one Isser, and therefore you're going to get one Kares for both. So Rashi explains what the Gemara means to say by this is that when it comes to giving Kares, there is the psukim where it says the punishment of Kares, and then besides the punishment, it has to say in the Torah the Isser itself, the lav itself, the warning that you should not do this. So even if, according to Rabbi Akiva, when you get to where the pasuk says the Kares, it divides the Kares of the Shechita and the Kares of to be Maila, which is the blood, separately, but when it comes to the warning for the Isser, over there, it combines them together. It says Shom Talar Lesecha v'Shom Tase. Over here, it includes them together. So therefore, there's a hekesh over here. Because of this hekesh that we compare Tala and Tase, that we say that both, whether you're shechting or you're doing anything else on the Mizbeach, so both of them are together. We compare the Sheichet and the Zaydik. So because of this hekesh, the Torah mixes them together and says that you're only going to be chayiv Kares once, according to everybody. So this is the source where you see the same halacha about Zrikas Hadam outside of the Beis HaMikdash, and there's two opinions. They'll learn from two different psukim, and there's no nafkamina between them. So this is an example where you have one halacha from two psukim.
But it says you can't have one halacha.
And a chanami, yeah, true. So there's an argument between them. So
if it's an argument between them, so it's not a problem.
What do you mean? It's not a problem.
This one says you learn it from me. This one you learn it.
Oh yeah, but
and
true. But going back to the point that we said before, in a bezdin, when you have two judges that are learning out their reasoning for this person being innocent from two different psukim, we know that one of them is wrong. There's an argument between them, and one of them must be wrong. So we can't count both of their opinions in the majority opinion of this judgment. Going back to the Mishnah, it said, Dinim Mammon is done by Yom V'chulu. The Mishnah said that when it comes to money matters, you have to judge by day, but then the final verdict could be given at night as well. Okay, so the Gemara brings a source for this, and there's a simon for this. Mishpat Mayne Mate. Says the Gemara Minan Emili. What's the source for this? Amar Abchia Bar Paped, Amakra. The pasuk says, V'shaftu es ha'am b'choles. That by the Parshas Yisra, you'll judge the people at all times. B'choles means that the judgment could be any time. Daytime, nighttime. Now, ihachi, if so, tchilas dinami, if that's the case, so even the beginning of the judgment should also be by night as well. But the Mishnah said that the beginning of the judgment has to be by day. The verdict could be at night. Says the Gemara Kedarava. There's another pasuk, like Rava said. The Rava asked a contradiction. The pasuk we just quoted says you can judge any time, by day or by night. In another pasuk it says that by day that's when you judge an issue that pertains to money matters like nachla, when it comes to inheritance. So it says only by day. Okay, so what does it mean? Day that it says in this pasuk of B'yayim and Chiloi, that means at the beginning of the deliberations of the judgment has to be by day. Laila ligmartim, but when it comes to the verdict, that can be even by night. Says the Gemara Masnisin the Loik Rab Meir. What it says in our Mishnah is not like Rab Meir's opinion. The Tanya we learned in the Braisa, Hoy Rab Meir says, Ma Tamad Loimar al PM Yeh Kol Riv V'chol Nega, that according to the words of the Kohen should be any argument, and also the halacha regarding a nega, if the nega is tamei or tar. Why is the pasuk writing these two together, a judgment regarding arguments and a judgment regarding a nega? Ella, what the pasuk here is saying is, makish rivim lenegayim. We compare the judgment of an argument regarding money matters to the judgment regarding a nega. Ma negayim by yoim, just like by a nega, you could only judge whether the nega is tamei or tar by day. Dichsivu b'yoim irois by, that when you look at a nega to see its color, it has to be when it's daytime to be able to see. Afrivim by yoim. So too, any argument, the judgment has to be by day. And just like when it comes to Negayim, Shaloi Besumin, and Negayim has to be by a Kayin that's not blind, not even blind in one eye. He has to have proper eyesight. Tichsiv L'chol Mare Eine HaKayin says Eine, he has to have both eyes to be able to see the nega properly. Afrivim, so too when it comes to a judge for any money matters, Shaloi Besumin. He can't be blind, not even in one eye. That's the comparison from Negayim to the Dinim Mominus. Then we also compare the opposite. Umakish negayim l'rivim. We compare negayim also to the judgment of money matters. Ma rivim, just like by an argument of money matters, shaloi b'krayvim, has to be with judges that are not relatives. Af negayim shaloi b'krayvim. So too a kayin that's coming to say whether nega is ta'ir or tamei, he can't be a relative. Now I would think that I compare it further and say, just like by a money matter b'shloisha, you have to have 3 judges. Af negayim b'shloisha, so when you decide regarding a nega, you should need 3 kayanim, and vidinu, and I would say that it's a kal v'chaymer. If you're deciding regarding money matters, you need 3 for this. Gufay lekol shekain, to decide regarding a nega on a person's body, whether he should have to be sent outside of the machne, definitely this should require to have at least 3 judges. Talmud Laimar, so the pasuk here says, "V'huva Aaron HaKohen oyel achad v'goymer." The pasuk says you bring it to Aaron HaKohen or one of the kohenim. So it clearly says, "Halamad tosh afilu kohen echad reis anagayim." That even one kohen can see and determine the status of a nega if it's tamei or tahor. So here we see in this brayso that Rab Meir says, when it comes to the judgment of a nega, the judgment and the verdict, it all has to be by day. Okay, so now the Gemara brings there was this case with this person that was blind, and he was blind on one eye. Some are actually greatest this in the Gemara. That was in the neighborhood of Rabbi Yechanan. He was a judge on a bezdin for money matters. And Rabbi Yechanan said nothing about this. He allowed this individual that was blind on one eye to be a judge. So the question is, Heichi avad hachi, how did Rabbi Yechanan allow this? Didn't Rabbi Yechanan say, halacha kistam mishnah? We always will follow the halacha of what it says in a stam mishnah, where there's no arguments. Now, Tanan, in a stam mishnah, it says, like Rab Meir's opinion that was quoted before, that a person that's a summa, even on one eye, cannot be a judge for money matters. The mishnah says, kol hakosher ladun, kosher lahoid. Someone that is kosher to be a judge, he could also be a kosher to testify. And now the Mishnah goes on to say, there is someone that can be kosher to say eidos, but but he can't be kosher as a judge. Who's this individual? Rabbi Yechanan explained that Mishnah. What it's talking about is a person that's blind on one eye. If you're blind on one eye, so you can see what happened, you can testify, but you can't be a judge. Why can't you be a judge? Like Rav Meir's opinion, because we compare it to a nega, that if you're blind on one ey, you can't be a judge. So this is a stam mishnah, like Rav Meir's opinion. So how did Rabbi Yechanan allow this judge that was blind on one eye to continue being a judge? Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yechanan stam achrina ashkach. Rabbi Yechanan is following the other stam mishnah, which is the stam mishnah over here that we're discussing in our mishnah over here in Sanhedrin, where it says Dine Mammon is done by Yom. The Dine Mammon is the judgment, the deliberations are by day. The Gaimrim balayla. But then the verdict could also be at night. So over here, what do you see? If it says there that the verdict could be by night, so Rashi says, so that means that it's just like a summa. In Rashi, it sounds like what he's saying is by night, when you can't see, so that's a time period where the person can't have proper eyesight, and you say that you can still do the verdict by night. So therefore, this is a stam mishnah, not like Rab Meir, that says that you can't do the verdict by night if you can't see properly. That's what Rashi says over here. In other Rishonim, it says that we see from the fact that you could do the verdict by night, that this is a stam mishnah, not like Rab Meir's opinion, that says that you compare to Negayim, that by Negayim, the verdict cannot be by night. So therefore, that means that he could also be a judge even if he's blind with one eye. So here, our mishnah is a stam mishnah, that even a judge that's blind with one eye could be a judge for money matters. Okay, so now we had a stam mishnah that we quoted before, and that's a mishnah in Nida actually, and then we have our stam mishnah here. It says the Gemara, my ulmei, the high stam and my high stam. Why is this stam mishnah any better than the other stam mishnah? It says the Gemara, either the reason is stam de Rabbi Modif. Our stam mishnah is following the majority opinion, the Rabbanon, and not Rab Meir. So therefore, this stam mishnah is what we paskin like. That stam mishnah we quoted was in Masechta Nida. This stam mishnah is in Masechta Sanhedrin, where the main halachas of this subject are learnt. So therefore, it's this stam mishnah that we follow. Now the Gemara says, now Rab Meir, according to Rab Meir's opinion, that says that you learn out from the Goyim that the entire judgment and also the verdict has to all be by day, like a nega. So the pasuk that we quoted before that says that you judge on all times, even by night. What is he darshan from there? He doesn't hold from the drasha that you can have paskin by night. So Rava says, this pasuk is coming to say that the judgment of money matters could be even on a cloudy day. And regarding this, I do not compare it to Negayim. The Tanan, by the Negayim, we learned, Ein Rayanas Negayim Shachris, you can't see the Negayim early in the morning or late in the afternoon. Not inside the house. Not on a cloudy day. Because something that may be a darker shade of a color could seem to be a stronger color. You can't have the proper vision to see the nega if you're not and also not in the afternoon. because a stronger color could seem to be dimmer, could be you don't see the color accurately, right? So you see over here that when it comes to the Negayim, you have to have exactly the proper time to see the color of the Nega. That we don't apply to dinim mominus. That's the v'shaftus on b'chaleis to say that even b'yayim amun in a cloudy day you could still judge dinim mominus. Now the other pasuk that was quoted before, Rab Meir, hi b'yayim anchile is one of my avidle. The pasuk that we quoted before that came to teach that the actual verdict has to be that the deliberations has to be could be by day. What do we learn out from this? So according to Rab Meir, we're learning out from the Goyim. We're not learning out from the pasuk of B'yayim and Chile is Bonav. So what does you learn out from this pasuk? Says the Gemara, Hahu mibayel lekidetani Rabbi Bar Chanina kamed Rav Nachman. He learns from this what Rabbi Bar Chanina said in front of Rav Nachman, that it says in the pasuk V'haya B'yayim and Chile is Bonav. V'haya B'yayim and Chile is Bonav. What do you learn from this? B'yayim atamapel nachlois v'yatamapel nachlois balayla. That during the day there's inheritance, by night there's no inheritance. Now what does this mean? The Gemara clarifies right away. Omalei. So he asked him, "What is the pshat in this drasha? Ela meyata man deshachach v'yamama. Person that passes away by day, yarsin lebane. His children are going to inherit him. Man deshachach b'leilia. Person that passes away nighttime, lo yarsin lebane. There's no inheritance. Of course, there's inheritance by day and by night. So he answered him, Dilme din nachlis ka'amrit. Rav Nachman himself tells Rabbi Bar Chanina, maybe you meant to say, not regarding the actual inheritance, but you meant to say regarding the halacha of judges judging nachlis, judging inheritance. Is it regarding this that you're saying? And the Gemara explains what this means. The Tanya, as we learned in Abraisa, after the Torah says the halachas of nachlis, the pasuk goes on to say that the halachas of nachlis are considered to be a chukas mishpat. It's a judgment. What does it mean when the pasuk refers to this as a judgment? The Torah is establishing that the nachlis in the parsha is considered to be a judgment. What's the significance of this? So the Gemara explains. What happens if 3 people are coming to visit a person that's on his deathbed? He's very ill now, and this person is coming and telling us what you should do with the inheritance. Ratzu kaisvin. If they want, they can write this down, and just to record what he says as Adam, that this is what he said. Ratzu oisentin. If they want, they can actually be right now 3 as judges, that this is going to be now a judgment based on what the person said. This can be an actual judgment that they're paskening, that you have to follow what he said, not just as Adam. However, because there were 3, right? And when he says what he says, his command of what he says, they can make this an actual judgment that this is the halacha. Now, shnayim, if there are only 2, kaisvin ve'ein din, then they can record this, but they can't be judges. There are only 2. Right? So the point over here is that you have to have 3 to be proper judges in order to be able to write this down, and as judges, the paskin. On this Rav Chiste said, that's only if there were 3 and they came into him during the day. Then they can, the whatever the dying person is saying should be the nachla. It's considered to be a judgment. His command is not just a command. It's considered to be a judgment, and therefore they could only be judges for this if it's during the day. Like it says, B'yayim and Chiloi. Avo balayla, however, if it's during the night, Kaisvin, Ve'ein din. They can only record it as Eidim, but they can't make any judgment on this. Why? Mishum D'Havalu Eidim. Because it's by night, they can only serve as Eidim. Ve'ein Eid, Nasadayin. So at that time, they could only be Eidim, so they can't be judges on this, because a witness could never become a judge. So that's what we're learning out from B'yayim and Chili as Banav, according to Rab Meir, that the command of this dying person is considered to be like a judgment, and therefore it could only be written during the day. Amalei in Hachikam Rav Nessa, he said to Rav Nachman, yes, this is the pshat that I meant, and this drasha according to Rab Meir.